First verse, chapter 7, Adi Lila. Agatye gagatim natva hinartadi kasadakam Shri Chaitanyam likyate sya prema bhakti vadanyata. Let me first offer my respectful obeisances unto Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the ultimate goal of life, for one bereft of all possessions in this material world, and is the only meaning for one advancing in spiritual life. Thus, let me write about his magnanimous contribution of prema bhakti. Jaya Jaya Mahaprabhu Shri Krishna Chaitanya Tahar Charanashita Se Bodhodanya. Let me offer glorification to the Supreme Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. One who has taken shelter of his lotus feet is the most glorified person. Gorve Gorvadi Chai Tatve Koilo Namaskar Guru Tattva Kohiyachi Ebe Pancher Vichar. In the beginning I have discussed the truth about the spiritual master. Now I shall try to explain the Panchatattva. Panchatattva Vatirna Chaitanya Rasange Panchatattva Loya Koden Sankirtana Range. These 5 tattvas descend with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and thus the Lord executes his Sankirtan movement with great pleasure. Panchatattva ekavastu nahi kichu bed, rasa swadite tabu vivida vibed. Spiritually, there are no differences between these 5 tattvas, for on the transcendental platform, everything is absolute. Yet there are also varieties in the spiritual world, and in order to taste these spiritual varieties, one should distinguish between them. This is kind of like a hammer to Mayavad conception, really. Like, if you want to say we're one, you can, but then you can't taste all this wonderful sweetness. You're missing out. No doubt there is that aspect of oneness, we will agree, but there's also this other aspect of distinction, and you can only taste that sweetness if you're embracing that aspect. And we were hearing in the previous chapter how it's only possible to taste the sweetness of Krishna in the mood of servitude. And so all of the all of the expansions of Krishna, who are, Vishnu Tattva, they're also situated in this mood of servitude, in service to Krishna, to Mahaprabhu, because it is only in that mood and that approach that they can taste that sweetness of Krishna. And what to speak of that? Even Krishna himself, he can't taste his own sweetness, so he has to accept the position of Srimati Radharani in the posture of servitude. And only then is he able to taste his own sweetness. So it is the most wonderful thing to embrace one's position as a natural servant, as a loving servant of the Lord. Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam. So, just to backtrack, these first, 12 or so chapters of the, maybe it's less than that, I don't remember. But the first chapters of the Adi Lila, they're elaborating upon the first 14 verses of the first chapter of the Adi Lila. And so there's verses about Mahaprabhu. There's 3-4 verses about Mahaprabhu, which are elaborated upon one by one. Then there's 5 or 6 verses about Nityananda Prabhu, which are elaborated upon. Then there's a verse on Advaita Charya that is elaborated upon. And now there's this verse about the Panchatattva, which is elaborated upon. And maybe this might be the last of those. I think this is actually the last of those 14 verses. I think it might be. So that's here in chapter 7. And this verse everybody knows because we're chanting every day in our Vandana. Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam. Let me offer my obeisances unto Lord Shri Krishna, who has manifested himself in 5 as a devotee, expansion of a devotee, incarnation of a devotee, pure devotee, and devotional energy. Swayam Bhagavan Krishna Ekale Ishvar Advitiya Nandatmaja Rasika Shekhar. Krishna, the reservoir of all pleasure, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, the Supreme Controller. No one is greater than or equal to Shri Krishna, yet he appears as the son of Maharaj Nanda. Rasadi Vilasi Raja Lalananagar Adojata Sabdik Tarpadikar. And this name, Braja Lalana, Gurudev gave that name. And, Gurudev, he really gave some very special names. And there are some names I only heard him he gave to one person, like unique, like that, Braja Lalana. He gave to Sanatani's granddaughter, Sriyukta Prabhu's granddaughter. And I'd never heard that word before, so for a long time I was wondering, what is that name? And then I came across it. It's here in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Lalana is a word, another word meaning a young lady. So Braja Lalana, young lady, one of the gopis. Very beautiful name. There's there's this other name he gave to someone in Italy. What is it? She lives in Liguria. What is it? I can't remember. But meaning, it's another word for lotus-eyed. And never heard anybody else, I can't remember right now. But some very unique and special names, Gurudev gave in his, divine inspiration. So the translation of that verse. Lord Shri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the supreme enjoyer in the rasa dance. He is the leader of the damsels of Braja, and all others are simply his associates. Se Krishna Vatirna Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Se Parikargan Sange Sabdanya. The self-same Lord Krishna advented himself as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, with all his eternal associates, who are also equally glorious. Hekala Ishvar Tattva Chaitanya Ishvar Bhakta Bhava Moitar Shuddha Kalevar. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the Supreme Controller, the one personality of Godhead, has ecstatically become a devotee, yet his body is transcendental and not materially tinged. Krishna Madhurya Ekadbhut Swabhav Apana Swadite Krishna Kore Bhakta Bhav. The transcendental mellow of conjugal love of Krishna is so wonderful that Krishna himself accepts the form of a devotee to relish and taste it fully. Ite Bhakta Bhavdore Chaitanya Gosai Bhakta Swarupta Nityananda Bai. For this reason, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Supreme Teacher, accepts the form of a devotee and accepts Lord Nityananda as his elder brother. Bhaktavatar Acharya Gosai 18 Tattva Sabe Prabhu Korigai. Sri Advaita Acharya is Lord Chaitanya's incarnation as a devotee. Therefore, these 3 tattvas, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, and Advaita Gosai, are the predominators or masters. Ek Mahaprabhu ar Prabhu Dui Jan, Dui Prabhu Seve Mahaprabhu Charam. One of them is Mahaprabhu, and the other 2 are Prabhus. These 2 Prabhus serve the lotus feet of Mahaprabhu. 18 Tattva Sarva Rajya Kori Mani Chaturta Jai Bhakta Tattva Arakdaka Jani. The three predominators, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, and Advaita Prabhu, are worshipable by all living entities. And the fourth principle, Shri Gadadhar Prabhu, is to be understood as their worshipper. So the Shakti, the Lord's potency, energy. Because Gadadhar is the avatar of Radharani in Gaur Leela. Shiva Sarijata Koti Koti Bhakta Gan Shuddha Bhakta Tattva Madhye Tasabar Ganan. There are innumerable pure devotees of the Lord, headed by Shivas Thakur, who are known as unalloyed devotees. Gadadhar Panditari Prabhu Shakti Avatar Antaranga Bhakta Kodi Ganan Jahar. The devotees headed by Gadadhar Pandit are to be considered incarnations of the internal potency of the Lord. They are confidential devotees engaged in the service of the Lord. Jasaba Loya Prabhu Nitya Vihar. It's difficult sometimes because this transliteration is so weird sometimes without the Bengali. So I don't know how to pronounce this. I don't know what this word is actually. If it could be a yao or it could be a jiao, or it's that N with the, they do it instead of a Chandra Bindu, right? So Ja Sabaloya Prabhu Nitya Vihar Ja Sabaloya Prabhu Kirtana Prachar Ja Sabaloya Koden Prema Swadam Ja Sabaloya Dan Kode Premadam. The internal devotees or potencies are all eternal associates in the pastimes of the Lord. Only with them does the Lord advent to propound the Sankirtan movement. Only with them does the Lord taste the mellow of conjugal love. And only with them does he distribute this love of God to people in general. The Lord, he does not, he is not alone. He is dependent upon his paraphernalia, upon his potency. Without that, he's something else, actually. It's a very interesting point, this relativity within the absolute. Without Vrindavan, the gopis aren't happy. Without his flute, the gopis aren't happy. Without Radharani, he's, as Param Guru Maharaj said, he's half Mayavad conception, he's Brahman conception, without his potency. So, he's coming here with his full paraphernalia, and they are enhancing his Leela to the utmost degree. Se pancha tattva mili prithvi asya purva prema bandhaner mudra ugadiya pancha mili lutte prema kore aswadan jata jata piye Krishna vade anukan. The characteristics of Krishna are understood to be a storehouse of transcendental love. Although that storehouse of love certainly came with Krishna when he was present, it was sealed. Krishna brought that storehouse with him, but it was closed. And then what happened? But when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came with his associates of the Panchatattva, they broke the seal and plundered the storehouse to taste transcendental love of Krishna. The more they tasted it, the more their thirst for it grew. This is the problem. Puna puna piyaya hoy mahamata. Drinking again and again, they became supremely mad, Puna puna piyaya hoy mahamata. Nache kande hase gai jaiche madamata. The Panchatattva danced again and again, and thus made it and thus made it easier to drink nectarian love of God. They danced, cried, laughed, and chanted like madmen, and in this way they distributed love of Godhead. Okay, well, something like that. Oh, this is so nice. Patra patra vichar nahi stanastan, jai jaha pai taha kore premadan. Shuddha Srila would always quote this. Patra, apatra, vichar nahi. That, the word patra here in the sense of a receiver, a recipient. So who's like a suitable recipient, and apatra, who's an unsuitable recipient. Vichar nahi. They didn't consider that. Nahi stanastan, nor did they consider a proper place or an improper place. But je jaha pai taha kore premadam. But wherever they could give it, they would give it. That was all. In distributing love of Godhead, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates did not consider who was a fit candidate and who was not, nor where such distribution should or should not take place. They made no conditions. Wherever they got the opportunity, the members of the Panchatattva distributed love of Godhead. Yeah, I mean, this is how Krishna likes to distribute himself. This is how Mahaprabhu likes to distribute Krishna. So then, we also have to say, who are we, to discriminate? This is how Mahaprabhu likes to distribute, and we also have to distribute like that. We cannot, based on some material qualification or disqualification, extend or not extend, accommodate or not accommodate. But if there's some willing receiver, then it must be given. If there's some, or then also from a different perspective, someone who's already practicing, are we going to judge them on the basis of some material qualification? Are we going to, restrict the flow of mercy to some practitioner because we think they're not qualified? No. If there is some receptivity there, then all encouragement, all mercy, all kindness, all faith, should be held for that person. As we saw with Srila Gurudev, the worst persons, he could give the most mercy to, And on the other hand, persons who appeared to be the most qualified, he may not give them that so much attention, because he's looking at something deeper. He's looking at that receptivity of the heart. I was going through an interview I did with Madhusudana Maharaj a couple of years ago, and he was talking about that point, and how sometimes he would see somebody would come, and Madhusudana Maharaj wasn't thinking that they were so special, so outstanding, but Gurudev immediately could see some special quality. And then later it would become more clear to other devotees. And then on the other hand, someone who looked, there were cases of devotees who looked very, proper and very auspicious and everything, and it was striking how Gurudev didn't give them very much attention, and then again, later sometimes realizing more about that person, But Gurudev, he had that quality instantly, we were discussing on Gurudev's Vyasa Puja, that X-ray vision, that he could do an instant scan of your spiritual DNA and understand, where you are, how much you can receive. That's what it's about, what you're able to receive right now. Pratishta is the worst thing. Pratishta is the worst thing that will disqualify us. We have to be in that state of need And that, that type of healthy negativity, that's what will make us a receiver, for that grace. Dutiya kaya diya bandar ujade, ascharya bandar prem shata guna bade. Although the members of the Panchatattva plundered the storehouse of love of Godhead and ate and distributed its contents, there was no scarcity, in case anyone was worried about that. There was no scarcity. For this wonderful storehouse is so complete that as the love is distributed, the supply increases hundreds of times. Although the members of the Panchatattva plundered the storehouse of love of Godhead and ate and distributed its contents, there was no scarcity, for this wonderful storehouse is so complete that as the love is distributed, the supply increases hundreds of times. Uchalila prema vanya chori ke vedai stri vrida balak yuva sabare dubai. The flood of love of Godhead swelled in all directions, and thus young men, old men, women, and children were all immersed in that inundation. Sajan dorjan pangu jadandagan prema vanyai dubailo jagate rajan. The Krishna consciousness movement will inundate the entire world and drown everyone, whether one be a gentleman, a rogue, or even lame, invalid, or blind. Jagat dubilo jiver hoilo bijanash tahade ki pancha jane paramahulas. When the 5 members of the Panchatattva saw the entire world drowned in love of Godhead, and the seed of material enjoyment in the living. When the 5 members of the Panchatattva saw the entire world drowned in love of Godhead, and the seed of material enjoyment in the living entities completely destroyed, they all became exceedingly happy. I'll just read this purport. In this connection, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes in his Anubhashya that since the living entities all belong to the marginal potency of the Lord, each and every living entity has a natural tendency to become Krishna conscious, although at the same time the seed of material enjoyment is undoubtedly within him. The seed of material enjoyment, watered by the course of material nature, fructifies to become a tree of material entanglement that endows the living entity with all kinds of material enjoyment. To enjoy such material facilities is to be afflicted with the 3 material miseries. So they're synonymous. Material enjoyment and material suffering, they go hand in hand. However, when by nature's law there is a flood, the seeds within the earth become inactive. Interesting. Similarly, as the inundation of love of Godhead spreads all over the world, the seeds of material enjoyment become impotent. Thus, the more the Krishna consciousness movement spreads, the more the desire for material enjoyment decreases. The seed of material enjoyment automatically becomes impotent with the increase of the Krishna consciousness movement. Haribo. And then Srila Swami he also says, instead of being envious that Krishna consciousness is spreading all over the world by the grace of Lord Chaitanya, those who are jealous should be happy. Nobody should be jealous about this. They should be happy. Okay. Jata jata prema vishti kore pancha jane tata tata bare jal vyape tri bhuvane. The more the 5 members of the Panchatattva cause the rains of love of Godhead to fall, the more the inundation increases and spreads all over the world. Mayavadi karma nishta kutarki kagan nindak pashandhi jata paruyadam sesa mahadaka daya palailo sevanyata samade junite narilo. The impersonalists, fruitive workers, false logicians, blasphemers, non-devotees, and lowest among the student community are very expert in avoiding the Krishna consciousness movement, and therefore the inundation of Krishna consciousness cannot touch them. Tahadeki Mahaprabhu koden chintan, jagatu baite ami korilo jatam, keo keho erailo pratikya hoilo banga, tasabadu baite patibo kichuranga. Seeing that the Mayavadis and others were fleeing, Lord Chaitanya thought, I wanted everyone to be immersed in this inundation of love of Godhead, but some of them have escaped. Therefore, I shall devise a trick to drown them also. This is actually what our mission is, that to drown people in this flood of prema bhakti. And Mahaprabhu and his associates, they're so caring, so loving that those who are running from that free distribution, they're also thinking, how can we get them? And this reminds me, there's this wonderful section in the beginning of Navadvita Mahatmya where Nityananda Prabhu's contemplating why some people reject prema. You remember that part? Maybe we can, is it there, Navadvita? Can you see? I think there's a copy there of Navadvita. He's like, let me consider carefully why anyone would reject love of God. Thank you so much. Let me see if I can find it. It's very, very, very funny. And then he lists all the different attractions in this world that, distract people. Oh, I don't know if I can find it. I just don't remember. You don't remember that? No. I thought it was at the beginning. I can't. Okay, well, I'll try and find it later. Maybe tomorrow. And do a search on the computer. Okay, we'll read just a little bit more. Actually, maybe it's a good place to stop. Yeah, I think actually it's a good place to stop. Then it goes to discuss Mahaprabhu's, the sequence of Mahaprabhu's, Leela. Okay.
Can I ask a question about Patra Apatra and like how I often wonder about like this inclusivity, extreme inclusivity and mercy that you're describing, while at the same time an exclusivity about what it is that is being offered. That sort of coexistence of the fact that it's hidden, but also freely distributed. Can you comment on that?
Well, it's kind of like the doors being opened, or like a very wide net is being thrown, and and then it's another matter as to how many, firstly can heed that call, and then of those who do heed that call can actually, follow the steps. I mean, what's being described here is a little different, because this is like Mahaprabhu himself, and we've heard Gurudev say how, and Srila Sridhar Maharaj also described how their potency was so great that they could do that. They had that Mahaprabhu could inspire Krishna Nam in jungle animals, because he had that type of potency. Gurudev commented how there was no chance to make a fence. Mahaprabhu would tell somebody to chant, and they would chant, and there was no chant, there was no time for namaparad. And Mahaprabhu's potency was so great, and it is described that he liberated the universe, and there's that discussion with Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur tells Mahaprabhu, "You liberated the whole world," and Mahaprabhu says, "Well, why are there still people?" And Haridas Thakur says, "Well, because as soon as the world is empty, then new souls, they enter again. There's unlimited souls, So that is one point. We do hear that they had that kind of potency. But then on the other hand, we can say, like, in terms of our, this is actually like an important point to consider, how we can make our preaching as broad and accommodating as possible, so that maximum number of persons can be attracted, So, like, I really appreciated how one comment of Srila Gurudev's about Bhaktivinoda Thakur, how Bhaktivinoda Thakur's accommodation and preaching, his accommodation of others and his preaching was very, very broad, very broad. Like he wrote in so many different languages and different styles. He addressed, very different sections of society, right? So his approach is very broad, and he's writing for uneducated people, he's writing for educated people, Western-minded people, Indian-minded people, scientifically minded persons. Like, he's covering a very broad spectrum and trying to make Krishna conscious. He wrote over 100 books or something like that. He's trying to present Krishna consciousness in a way that is attractive to a very broad spectrum of people. But at the same time, Gurudev pointed out, like, his own personal worship was the worship of Gaur Gadadhar. That's like the most exclusive conception, the highest type of worship, most confidential type of worship. So in the same way, and also Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in the way that he spread Krishna consciousness, he changed all the rules, He liked to do things in a very grand way, in a very impressive way, But what was he giving? Shiti Liti Vidi Ragaraja Vadesha Dani. He was giving that very exclusive and fine conception of Shri Shri Radha Krishna and Vrindavan. So in the same way, we have to, in terms of how we will try to attract people and make people feel like this is their own wealth, this isn't some foreign thing, then we maybe broaden our approach, like to get them on the boat, so to speak. But then, yes, ultimately what we're giving them, as you say, or what we're leading, not us, but our gurus are leading everyone to, is something extremely high and extremely, exclusive. There was I don't remember if it was Avadut Maharaj or Goswami Maharaj, some years ago this point was discussed. I think it was Goswami Maharaj. He had this nice phrase, like all-inclusive means and most exclusive goal, or something like that. He sums this all up in a very nice way. How we may be very broad, in how we're trying to demonstrate the sweetness and the wonder of all of this. But then ultimately, it is something very, very exclusive that is being given, that is being idealized. Does that address here? Yeah, I mean it's a point, and it's a difficult point, as we know. Yeah, I mean that's the challenge of the preacher, knowing, and according to time, place, circumstance, the current society, how to present Krishna consciousness. Like Srila Gurudev gave this really nice talk once, where he was comparing like how Mahaprabhu spread Krishna consciousness in his time to how it's being spread in the modern age, and he gave specifically the example of Avadut Maharaj. And you saying actually it's the same thing, how Mahaprabhu, like he was in a particular age where there were particular expectations of what spiritual practice means, what is proper behavior and all these things. So Mahaprabhu had to be he had to follow a very strict level of vairagya, in order to have the respect of the people. He had to follow a very strict sannyasi life. And also the Goswamis, very extreme, That was largely because, that's nothing to do with Krishna consciousness, being renounced. That's not what Krishna consciousness is about. But that was largely because that was the expectation of society at the time. They wouldn't take you seriously. So we see Mahaprabhu, of course, in some ways Mahaprabhu was revolutionary, in how he spread Krishna consciousness to anyone and everyone, spread the Maha Mantra to everyone. But otherwise, he, like we see, Gurudev pointed out, he didn't break the laws of society, like with the Jagannath temple, like King Prataparudra, he's the king of Orissa. He would have jumped at the chance to change the rules for Mahaprabhu's pleasure, right? Very easily, Mahaprabhu could have said, look, I want my devotees, Haridas Thakur, my dear friends, Rup, Sanat, and I want them to be able to enter the temple. Can you please allow this? It wouldn't have been a problem for Prataparudra. But Mahaprabhu didn't do that because there's no need to change the society. That's not what, Krishna consciousness is not a social revolution. It's something much, much more core and, it's something much deeper than that. It's an inner flow. So rather, we adjust with our environment, and in that environment, that internal flow can continue. So Mahaprabhu honored what was the societal expectations. And then there's that extreme example, which Gurudev even said, like this is hard for me, like I'm still surprised about this, that when Sanatana Goswami ran across the burning hot sand to see Mahaprabhu, because he wanted to avoid the path of the pandas, so they wouldn't be contaminated, as he's thinking. So in the middle of Mahaprabhu called for him in the middle of the day, and so he ran across the beach, the burning hot sand at midday, so he didn't walk on the path even on the path of the pandas. And then what did Mahaprabhu say? What are you doing, you crazy man? No, he says, this is you are following the etiquette. The Vaishnav etiquette, or the etiquette is the ornament of the devotee. Like Mahaprabhu celebrates that. He encourages that, Mahaprabhu won't sleep on a bed. He won't sleep on a comfortable mattress. It has to be, a little leaf thing, that he sleeps on, because that was the expectation for sannyasis, for someone who's seriously following, spiritual practice. That's what was expected. So he had to do that. Mahaprabhu won't hear the name of a woman. like it's extreme stuff, But then Srila Gurudev, he said, but that same movement of Mahaprabhu is continuing today with Jagannath Vallabh Prabhu, Avadut Maharaj, who's doing something like superficially it's completely opposite, putting on these big Indian festivals, having dancing girls and music, and now we were discussing this the other day, like nowadays it's all about enjoyment. If you try to present something very austere and simple, people will be bored, and this will be, dry, unattractive, You have to make things look really exciting and enjoyable. It's all about enjoyment nowadays. So like you have to keep up, You have to present things in a very attractive way. Otherwise they won't be interested. So it's about time, place, and circumstance, and that's the challenge of the preacher. How to present Krishna consciousness in such a way that the current society can be attracted to that.